Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Saturday everybody. I hope you're enjoying a restful weekend. It is the weekend, so as usual, it's a foreign policy heavy video, and today we'll be moving through salient developments in US-China relations. This week, the Biden administration issued an executive order to strengthen the cybersecurity of US ports. One of the concerns is that nearly 80% of cranes at US ports are made in the People's Republic of China and could theoretically be accessed remotely. The administration also intends to bring domestic onshore manufacturing capacity back to the US with over $20 billion in investment in US port infrastructure. The White House said that the US Coast Guard will soon issue a maritime security directive on cyber risk management actions for ship-to-shore cranes manufactured by the People's Republic of China located in the US at strategic commercial seaports. The directive will impose a number of cybersecurity requirements on the owners and operators of PRC-manufactured cranes. Quote, "The specific requirements are deemed sensitive security information and cannot be shared publicly." End quote. Some long-term China Update viewers may remember last year, US-based The Wall Street Journal reported that the Pentagon sees giant cargo cranes as a possible Chinese spying tool. The article reported that some national security and Pentagon officials have compared ship-to-shore cranes made by China-based manufacturer ZPMC to a Trojan horse. Quote, "While comparatively well-made and inexpensive, they contain sophisticated sensors that can register and track the provenance and destination of containers, prompting concerns that China could capture information about material being shipped in or out of the country to support US military operations around the world." End quote. Today, the outlet explains, ZPMC says it controls around 70% of the global market for cranes and has sold its equipment in more than 100 countries. Quote, "A US official said the company makes nearly 80% of the ship-to-shore cranes in use at US ports." End quote. US-based outlet The New York Times writes that the White House announcement this week comes as American officials, including the FBI director, warn that Beijing may seek to start an extensive hacking operation geared at taking down the US's power grid, oil pipelines, and water systems in the event of a conflict over Taiwan. Speaking of spying and intelligence, this week too, China's top spying agency, the Ministry of State Security, posted a bilingual Chinese and English attack piece criticizing CIA Director Bill Burns in his recent Foreign Affairs article, Spycraft and Statecraft, which we covered at the time. In the article, the Ministry of State Security wrote, quote, "In recent years, the USA, on the one hand, started intelligence wars, sparing no efforts to step up its espionage against China, and on the other hand, brought suit against its victims, scandalously smeared China's justified defense in trying to misrepresent the counter-espionage law of the PRC as an evil law. This is nothing but another typical case of hegemonic, domineering, and bullying practices of the USA." End quote. Interestingly, this is the first time that the Ministry of State Security has published an article in both Chinese and English, a sign perhaps that it believes it can reach a global audience, perhaps in the so-called Global South. State-run media supplemented the article, with the state-run Global Times writing on Thursday, quote, "The US has been a global intelligence powerhouse, with the CIA extending its reach to every corner of the world. Although each country has its national security concerns, the security of one state shall never be at the cost of the insecurity of another state. Now that the CIA has repeatedly vowed to rebuild its intelligence networks in China so as to gather more China-related intelligence, China has no other choice but to use legal means to guard against the crackdown on espionage activities. This is the only way we can create a sound and safe working and living environment for those who are really peace-loving and willing to invest in China." End quote. We can see here that the state media is reacting to the increased concern from international investors and businesses in China that the so-called anti-espionage laws are too widely defined and threaten their safety within the country. It seems too that Director Burns's article hit a nerve in Beijing. Now, let's end part 1 on US-China developments on a warmer note. During their meeting last year, Xi Jinping told Biden that the PRC will send 2 new pandas to the San Diego Zoo, and it looks like discussions are underway with the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. for pandas as well. This is a renewing of sorts of so-called panda diplomacy. This week, Dr. Brandy Smith, director of the National Zoo in D.C., told local media, quote, "It's always been our intention and hope to have giant pandas at the zoo in the future and continue our research here and conservation work in China. The zoo is in discussions with our Chinese partner, the China Wildlife Conservation Association, to develop a future giant panda program." End quote. We note that the Europeans may also be getting more pandas. According to a statement on its official account on Thursday, China Wildlife Conservation Association, quote, reached an agreement with the Madrid Zoo in Spain and the San Diego Zoo in the United States, respectively, on a new round of international conservation research on giant pandas. End quote. Next up, is this China's ultimate ghost city? But just quickly, I have a huge favor to ask. If you're enjoying today's video or getting some value from it, please hit the like and subscribe button. This is the only way in which the channel can grow. It's just 2 clicks of the mouse, but it's a huge help for me and the channel. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description below for those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep the channel financially sustainable. It is just me making these episodes, but your support is a huge motivation. Thank you so much, everyone, as always, for the ongoing support. Recently, US outlet Bloomberg published a long article on Xiong'an, Xi Jinping's so-called national project of millennial significance. The article was called "Xi's Empty Dream City of Xiong'an Shows Limits of His Power, Even in China." The northern megacity has been years in the making and has sparked much controversy internationally and at home. Indeed, I remember while I was doing my master's degree in Beijing several years ago, some of my Chinese professors expressed concern with the project. Let us examine some of this Bloomberg article to get a sense of the concern. We now quote selected excerpts directly. "Xiong'an was billed as a gleaming high-tech metropolis that would serve as a release valve for the crowded Chinese capital, a model city in the history of human development. The ruling Communist Party has since spent some 610 billion yuan, $85 billion on the city, more than double the cost of the Three Gorges Dam. On former cornfields now stand a train station, office buildings, residential compounds, 5-star hotels, schools, and hospitals. Just one thing is lacking: residents. When Bloomberg visited on a weekday this month, a highway into the city was almost empty. In the city center, a few shops and restaurants were open on streets lined with brand new government headquarters, office buildings, residential compounds, and hotels. I worked hard in the college entrance exams to come to Beijing, not to Xiong'an, said a first-year student at the China University of Geosciences, who asked for anonymity to speak to avoid official reprisals. The city's slow start underscores the flaws in Xi's plan to lure people to the capital, where the nation's best resources are centered. Xi trumpeted the city's progress in his annual New Year speech, saying it was growing fast and helping to revitalize northeast China. Last year he warned against resisting the project, calling it totally correct. People must move here if needed, he said during a May visit to the city with top leaders including the Premier and his Chief of Staff. But people are voting with their feet, said Alfred Wu, an associate professor at the National University of Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. This resistance is based on real-world interest. If you cannot make their interests align with your own interest, then of course you can't make it happen, he said. There is also the criticism that the site was poorly chosen because it's historically prone to flooding due to its low elevation. Construction of permanent structures had been banned in the area after a major flood in 1963, yet it was exactly because of that lack of buildings that officials decided to build there. Xi Jinping has time for the city to get going, however. Xiong'an has a mid-century target for completion and a 2035 near-term development milestone. Thus, Xiong'an still has decades to go before its success can be tested, and many Chinese cities, once ridiculed as ghost towns, have later become populated as industry moved in. Here ends our direct examination of the Bloomberg piece. We cover one more observation. Quote, "It is still empty, as the Bloomberg story shows in vivid detail, and there is resistance among people who are supposed to be moving from Beijing to this still desolate Hebei city, but I think it is far too early to declare it a forever ghost town. Last May, she took 3 standing committee members on an inspection tour there, said that it has been demonstrated that the major decision of the CPC Central Committee to construct the Xiong'an new area is entirely correct, and reiterated the need for various state-owned enterprises and other institutions to make plans to move there." End quote. Thus, it remains an open question whether Xiong'an will be successful or a ghost city of historic proportions. We will have to follow this space as it develops going forward. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a wonderful Saturday, and I will see you all on Monday.